and welcome
to the BS podcast.
B for Belle
S for Shaz. This is just two girls talking BS
and calling BS out
through our eyes.
Before we start, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay our respects to the elders past, present, and emerging, and any First Nations people listening to this episode.
We also want to acknowledge that next week, July 7th to the 14th, is NAIDOC Week, which is a time to celebrate and recognise the history, the culture, and the achievements of all Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We're going to pop a link in our blurb where you can find information about all the local events that are happening around you. Belle, it's really great to be back. I've missed these comfy couches.
I know, this is so much nicer than the couches I have at home.
I know, and I feel like so much has happened around the world, and I think we have a lot to unpack today.
Absolutely.
But before we start, I need a sanity check.
I am insane. Let's just get this out of the way.
Well, I don't know if you're the right person to ask then. I need a sanity check from you and maybe the Calling BS fan bam. Is it me or is Melbourne officially too cold to handle? It is frosty out there. I opened my windows and I'm pretty sure it felt like it was snowing.
Well, it should have been snowing. I wouldn't be surprised if it started snowing. It was absolutely way too cold this week and very timely for our discussion today.
Absolutely. So what's been happening with you, Belle?
Well, I do have a few exciting updates to share with our listeners. Well, given that the weather has been so cold, I'm glad that there are some things to look forward to. I've just been promoted. So in my thank you. Outside of this podcast, in my day job, I am a diversity, equity, inclusion consultant at a boutique firm, and I'm really excited about this new chapter. Additionally, for those of you who might know, I also run a not-for-profit called Future Forte, and we've just announced our conference date for this year, which will be on the 6th of September. So save the date.
Lock it in. Belle, you are girl bossing too hard. I love it. I'm so proud of you.
Oh.
It's so exciting. It is so well deserved. And Future Forte, those of you who've never attended, this is a place that feels like home. Every time I go to this conference, I feel inspired. I meet people that I would have never had the opportunity to meet before. And I go there and I'm inspired. I meet wonderful people and I leave there going, I think I could make a difference. And that's what's important. So like, all props to you and the amazing team you have behind you. So
that is so lovely to hear, Shaz. That is exactly how I feel going to the events as well. And that's how we design and curate the events. So we're really looking forward to it. But you have buried the lead there. You actually have escaped the cold in Melbourne for a few weeks there. Very jealous. Tell us, what have you been up to?
So I was very lucky and I got to go to a conference in Europe.
Jealous.
I know, look, it was amazing. And I got to meet some really amazing people doing some amazing, really interesting things with AI and digital health. And I think this might be a topic that both you and I are quite interested in, that intersection between technology and how like culturally and linguistically diverse people are seen, and how we are, like the data, does it really include us? Does it not include us? And what might be some of the impact and effects of such such conversations? So I think this is something that you and I might have a lot to chat about, but we'll park that for a later episode.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
With saying that, September 6th, lock it in.
Indeed. All right. Well, each episode, we start with breaking down the biggest story of the month. In this case, we are literally talking about breaking apart the smallest unit of physical matter, an atom. Shaz, what is all this talk about nuclear?
Belle, I think the chilly Aussie winter has finally got the coalition thinking about staying warm.
Well, warming gets cold hearts, I hope.
So what I think has happened is that it was a cold night. So someone's taken a hot cuppa. They finally put Oppenheimer on streaming, and then they've seen those baby blue eyes and felt this and then gone, wow, this is really interesting. And the next day looked at their energy bills and went, why is this skyrocketed through the roof? And kind of went 2 and 2 together and went, nuclear, baby. Australia, we need nuclear.
I like that conspiracy theory right there. And just to clarify, those baby blues, we're talking about Cillian Murphy. And if it's up to me, we'll be talking about Cillian Murphy all day long.
Unfortunately, though, we're going to park those baby blues and focus on Peter Dutton instead.
Not the same, I know, but we'll do what we have to do.
Exactly. So in mid-June, the opposition announced its Australia Energy Future Policy in a press release. Basically, what they've proposed is an alternative to the Labor government's renewable energy plan, and it's all about nuclear. So tell me, Belle, what is nuclear?
Well, as everyone knows, we are in the middle of an energy crisis. Post-pandemic, there's a global shortage in energy and rising costs in oil and gas. If you have received an electricity bill in the last couple of months, you know what I mean.
I think everyone knows what
It really hurts the pocket.
Absolutely. But I think what's really important to acknowledge is that this is a much broader and complex issue. And there's quite a lot of factors at play here. There's the aftershocks of the pandemic, there's extreme weather events, there's underinvestment in green energy and stricter environmental regulation. There's geopolitical tension with Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the limited gas options. And so
it's really complicated.
Yeah, it all contributes. And so the result is much of Europe shivered through the last Northern Hemisphere winter. And now many of us in Australia are doing the same. Rising energy costs has really led to this renewed focus on finding reliable and sustainable energy sources.
Yeah, and it is not just the cost, but also the impact of climate change as well. The world has largely relied on coal, gas, and petroleum, so fossil fuels for energy since really the Industrial Revolution. But it really exploded exponentially since the 1950s. If you've seen the chart, it is absolutely shocking. It just went up like that in the last couple of decades. Scientists have known about the severe negative environmental impacts of greenhouse gas emission for a long time. I totally remember learning about it in primary school science textbooks. But the industry and governments shockingly mostly turn a blind eye until very recently, when the impact of climate change is right in front of our eyes and cannot be ignored.
Absolutely. And this is like, I remember this is what got me interested in politics to begin with. I remember being a child and like it was Kevin 07. For those of you who were in Australia at that time, you remember this. And it was all around signing the Kyoto Protocol. And that's kind of how young me even got interested in politics, got interested in like wanting to be a part of this.
You're Greta before Greta.
Oh, no.
In your local Brunswick
area. It wasn't. It was perhaps Greta in my household of my parents going, I don't understand what you are saying. And I probably didn't know much anyways. But I think what's really important to acknowledge now, especially now, is that Australia is a signatory on the 2015 Paris Agreement, which is an important international treaty on climate change. And it's been adopted by 196 parties. This means that we, as Australia, have obligations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and limit global warming well below the 2 degrees Celsius. And ideally, we actually want to reduce it to like 1.5 degrees to the in comparison to the pre-industrial era.
Yeah, with the goal actually being limiting the rise is actually quite terrifying. Like not actually staying, but limiting the rise itself. And we're already struggling with that.
Yes, and it's led to so many issues. And exceeding this could actually lead to more significant weather events. You know, the Arctic ice caps melting, like such extreme weather conditions. And that has follow-on impacts to people like land mass disappearing.
Absolutely. We've seen the severe flooding in the last couple of years. We've seen the bushfires. It absolutely ravages communities, homes, and animals.
Yeah, absolutely. And so despite Australia making this promise to cut emissions by 43% below 2005 levels by 2030, so that's in 6 years, our current
shocking.
And it's an ambitious target, but our current plans and policies and the financial support needed is completely insufficient. And in fact, there's kind of talks about abandoning this 2030 target for a 2050 target. And it really gets me frustrated because we really need to reduce greenhouse emissions. And this is where that debate around energy sources comes to play.
Yeah, so what are the alternatives to fossil fuels? The two known energy sources that are central to this debate are renewable energy and nuclear energy. Renewables are basically those that are replenished continually, like solar, wind, and hydro. Nuclear, on the other hand, is generated from materials that, while they are not renewable, it is clean, meaning that it doesn't emit greenhouse gases. So, Shaz, what is nuclear energy? I know you asked me this earlier, but
I
now
love how
we're
you're
getting
asking.
into the heart of it, like
I love
throwing
how-
it back to you,
Yeah, I love how you're asking me.
like a hot coal.
Yeah. Lucky I didn't bring the coal into the parliament, right? Throwback. For those of you who know, who know.
If you know, you know.
I want to preface this by saying both Belle and I are not are trained as scientists, but not physicists, but we are science nerds. And in this case, we are Simpsons super fans. So this is where most of our knowledge comes through. But in saying that,
The three-head fish.
in saying that, though, we have done our research. And so we've done our research because we want to break this down for you in a way that's easily understandable. Because when you hear about nuclear, you have all these preconceived notions of what it is, what it means. You have these stereotypes. So we actually wanted to go in and see what the science says. So the idea of nuclear energy is actually rooted in the dark history of the atomic bomb. So in the 1930s, scientists in Germany and Italy first discovered nuclear fission and shared these findings at conferences, including Albert Einstein. This is when Albert Einstein actually wrote a letter to the US president at that time, kind of going, hey, there might be a possibility of a bomb with this. That actually happened. And in the 1940s, that's when the US scientists started worrying about Nazi Germany developing the atomic bomb and actually launched a secret project called the Manhattan Project. This is where Oppenheimer comes into play. His team actually figured out how to control nuclear fission and how to create a self-sustaining nuclear chain reaction where the neutrons split atoms, releasing energies, which then releases more neutrons to continue the process. And so the nuclear bomb was an uncontrolled chain reaction, whereas nuclear energy is a more slow and regulated controlled chain reaction to generate electricity.
The scientific discovery was absolutely fascinating. That was possibly my favorite part of the film. Well, in addition to those baby blue eyes, it was absolutely fascinating. But as you said, it really came from this place that is an ugly chapter of the history. So the US launched the two atomic bombs at Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan in 1945. It killed 140,000 people at the time. And survivors on the day also experienced ongoing long-term impacts from the radiation, which include cancers and other diseases. It truly was a horrific man-made tragedy. But fast forward to the 1950s, while the atomic bomb has raised significant moral debate, scientists and the government saw the potential for peaceful uses for nuclear energy. And by 1957, the world's first civilian nuclear power plant was up and running.
Yeah. And what is a nuclear power plant? And this is where let's get sciencey. Nuclear power plants actually use a special type of uranium fuel called uranium-235, which actually quite readily splits when it is hit by a neutron. And so this can release that tremendous amount of energy required that in turn releases heat. So a nuclear power plant uses this heat from the splitting of the atoms to generate steam. So it generates steam and the turbines move, generating electricity. In coal power plants, coal is used to create that steam. So the difference is actually the energy source, but the downstream impact is exactly the same. But by burning coal, what actually happens is the byproduct is carbon dioxide, which is why it becomes dirty fuel. It gets trapped into the atmosphere. So this is the difference between coal and nuclear. With nuclear, there is a byproduct, but it is not dirty in the sense that it releases greenhouse gases.
Yes. Yeah, so by the 1970s to 1990s, nuclear energy was falling out of favor due to the high costs and safety concerns. There had been a few high-profile nuclear accidents that spooked public confidence that include the Three Mile Island in the US in 1979, the Chernobyl accident in Ukraine in 1986, which was the worst ever nuclear accident in the world, resulting in over 75 million people being exposed to dangerously high levels of radiation. That was absolutely a massive accident. There was also the 2011 accident in Fukushima in Japan when the earthquake and tsunami caused the failure of both nuclear reactors that sealed the deal for the end of the nuclear energy hype at that time.
Yeah, and it probably didn't help that there were many movies and TV
Yes.
shows that kind of that fear of what the potential of nuclear, especially given its history in the atomic bomb.
Yes.
People were very afraid, and public perception had already started changing. So why are we even talking about it today? The renewed interest has really come because how do we combat climate change? It is one of the world's most pressing matters, and technology advocates for nuclear energy have said the safety concerns, we've taken care of that, the technology has gotten better. So there is this renewed interest in nuclear as a means to help combat climate change.
So, Shaz, how is nuclear used today? Is nuclear used at all?
So nuclear energy provides about 10% of the world's electricity needs. And they do this through about 440 power reactors. It is the world's second largest source of low carbon power. So 26% of all total, and this is in 2020 numbers. France gets about 70% of all its electricity needs from nuclear power, while Ukraine, Slovakia, Belgium, and Hungary get about half from nuclear power. Japan used to rely on nuclear power, and about 1/4 of their nuclear energy diversity comes from nuclear, and it is somewhat expected to return to that level. So things have changed. They've been testing out a few different things. So, Belle, that's kind of what's happening around the world. What's happening in Australia?
Yeah, so juxtapose this with Australia, it is, I suppose, quite interesting that we essentially use 0% nuclear energy. We have 61% that is relying still on coal, which is extremely high compared to other Western countries. And the other 39% in renewables. And this was really partly because Australia's attachment to the mining industry is really strong. It has helped drive Australia's economy for many decades, and there are many mining towns and people that rely on this industry. With the renewables, Australia also has the natural advantage of abundant wind and sun to use. So at this stage, we still rely quite heavily on coal for base load power, which is the minimum level of electricity demand on an electrical grid.
Yeah. So why now? And why after all this time? The opposition has made it clear that nuclear is going to be a key election promise for them. They've said that they're going to build 7 nuclear power plants across Australia by 2015. These are going to be located at old or existing coal sites in 5 different states, with plans to get the first nuclear reactor by 2035. This policy kind of sets a clear divide between the coalition government's energy plans and the government's energy plans.
Yeah, about how they are going to drive this energy transition, which we have to do to combat climate change. So the question is, could Australia have a nuclear future? Well, this debate has been going on since the 1950s, as you mentioned, and Australia does have over 30% of the world's uranium deposits, making it the 3rd largest uranium producer. And uranium, as you described earlier, is the primary fuel in nuclear power plants. And we do have 1 nuclear reactor in New South Wales, but it's used for medical purposes, not electricity generation.
Like you say, this is an ongoing debate, and I'm sure that we're going to hear more, especially as the coalition starts releasing economic modeling, and they start
Which
releasing,
we hope they will.
rather than a one-page press release. But the conversation is something, it's a topic that I'm sure we're going to hear about, especially as we desperately try to figure out how we can diversify our energy sources. Lots of advocates see nuclear as a proven solution. It's implemented in the world. It's a consistent source for baseload power. It's crucial for a stable electricity grid. And they really do believe that it has to be part of the conversation in helping achieve climate goals by reducing the reliance on fossil fuels.
Yeah, and anti-nuclear advocates say that the economics just don't add up. And that includes very trusted economists and lots of experts in this field as well. The amount of money, land required to build a nuclear power plant at this stage, when renewables are already providing 39% of Australia's electricity needs, it just doesn't make sense. It will offset any immediate gain in reduction in greenhouse gases. And really, the biggest critique at the moment is that the opposition's proposal is not a real proposal. Let's be real. It is not a thought out policy position yet. As you said, it is a one-page media release. There is a lack of details and evidence behind their claims that we really need to examine if we were to have a serious policy debate for Australia's future.
Mm-hmm.
This represents a big investment, a big direction to go down if opposition wants us to consider this going into the election. So we have to be careful not to put the two policy proposals as equal at this stage. And that's what I think Shaz and I both found when we were doing this research. We were quite surprised by the lack of details in this proposal. We are interested in nuclear energy as a topic, the science, the history behind it, and what is happening in the world. But at this stage, when we talk about this policy, it's important to say that what the opposition proposed is just a political line at the moment, and we'll have to wait and see if it evolves before the election.
Yeah.
And I think this is important for us to mention because I want to credit my friend Emma Gray for highlighting this to me. And also the other day when I was at the coffee shop, I overheard, I was not eavesdropping, I was working, but there were a few, I was totally eavesdropping. But there were a few tradies who were just talking about nuclear energy as a topic, and they were really kind of debating about this and saying that this is something that we should seriously consider. So that made me think that this is coming into public consciousness. People are talking about it more, and it's important for us all to be educated enough about the policy positions and what it means for Australia before people go into election booths.
I 100% agree. And I think right now, when that education piece, and not just through movies or The Simpsons or things like that, actually understanding the science and understanding the desperate need for change to happen. So where do we go from here? The debate around nuclear energy in Australia is really heating up. Like you say, it's in cafe. Like you say, it's in cafes, it's with the tradies, and it's clear that we really need to weigh the pros and the cons quite carefully. So calling on our BS family, we want to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think? What are your thoughts on Australia's potential nuclear future? Are you calling BS?
Part 2. I'm feeling energized with all that nuclear talk. Let's see how many puns we can.
Count the number of puns we put in this episode.
It's a drinking game. With that, let's move on to our next segment, Breaking Stereotypes, where we both bring to the table two people who have broken stereotypes. Self-explanatory. All right, I'll start first, Shaz. My breaking stereotype is, of course, Marie Curie.
I would have guessed.
I know, I'm a plain open book. There's no secret here. Born in Poland in 1867, Marie was an incredible scientist. Absolutely. She's just such an amazing role model and icon for any, I would say, all little girls who go into science and are interested in STEM. She's the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and because women always do it better than men, she's also the first person to win 2 Nobel Prizes. In a time where women were discouraged from working, let alone pursuing science, Marie made the cutting-edge discovery of radioactive elements, radium and polonium. In fact, she coined the term radioactivity.
I love
Slay.
I love how not only did she like burst into the scene where no women was allowed in science, she did it with grace, she did it with intellect, and then she broke the world record. Not just like, well, the world record in terms of getting, this is the highest prize in science. She didn't win it once, she won
I
it
know.
twice.
Oh, what an overachiever, setting the bar high. She also set up the first military radiology center in France during World War I to treat wounded soldiers. I found this fact very interesting and also ties in with our biggest topic today. And safe to say her impact is still felt today. Her work paved the way for the development of X-ray technology, radiation therapy for cancer, and countless other advancements in medicine. Yeah, we all have a lot to thank her for.
Yeah.
All right, Shaz, what are you bringing?
So all this talk about climate change and, you know, how do we actually care for the world and care for the country has actually got me thinking. And while I was doing my research for this breaking stereotype, I've actually kind of broken the stereotype of breaking the stereotype.
Breaking the rule. I love that, an inception of breaking stereotypes.
Absolutely. So instead of choosing a person, I've chosen a practice.
Okay.
So cultural burning, it's also known as cool burning, is a traditional Aboriginal land management practice that has been used for over 60,000 years to reduce fire hazards and encourage new growth of culturally significant species and protect native wildlife in Australia. However, because of centuries of Euro-Australian colonization and suppression of Aboriginal people and their practices, the practice of cool burning has actually been diminished. But because of climate change, these extreme bushfires, there's actually been a bit of a national conversation, a national shift in how we think about land management and bushfire prevention, especially in Australia. And cool burning is now being integrated into how Australia actually manages
that's very cool.
bushfires. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it really just got me thinking, how can we learn from some of these ancient traditions? When we think about climate change, we think of it as a new problem, but ancient traditions have been caring for country, caring for how we live and how we work together as a community for many, many centuries. And we have so much to learn from them. And sometimes the solution already exists. It's about integrating that and bringing it into real world application.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for bringing that to the table. It's very timely for NAIDOC Week as well. And as you say, there is so much Aboriginal knowledge that had been disregarded because of colonization. So it's good to see that their knowledge and practices are getting more attention and respect as they should.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we want to mention, because we're both scientists, I think it's really important that scientists recognize First Nations as one of Australia's first scientists. They know how to do a lot of things with scientific practices. So absolutely, science recognizes science.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in our next segment, a segment that we call Bold or Silly, Belle and I, we're going to share 2 stories from around the world that will hopefully bring a smile to your face. Neither of us know what each other is bringing to the table. So Belle, rock, paper, scissors, let's see who goes
All right,
first.
the most brutal and simple way. Let's do it.
Rock, paper, scissors. Belle, I think you won this. Fair and square. You go first.
Okay. Is that a prize of winning? All right. This week, a story that had been going on for the last 15 years had come to a close for now. I'm talking Julian Assange. What a massive story. It was a big story in Australia.
It was
100%.
massive. And like even the arc it's been a storybook arc.
It will be on the big screen soon enough, I am sure. So for the uninitiated, he was a prominent hacker in Australia before all this happened. So he founded WikiLeaks in 2006, and in 2010, WikiLeaks published secret US military materials depicting war crimes in Iraq, which caused a massive storm, as you can imagine. The US pursued Assange for espionage and conspiracy, and he's been avoiding extradition at different places, including at the Ecuadorian embassy for 6 years. He's like a house guest that never moves on. After strong intervention from the Australian government in recent years, Julian Assange has arrived back here as a free man, but a convicted felon. He struck a plea deal with the US court where they backdated his time served in London prison, so he could just come back to Australia. An important part to mention also as part of his story is the 2 sexual assault charges that he faced in Sweden also in the 2010s.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about him is that when he first released the war crimes, everyone was like, wow, what a
Hero.
what a hero. And then in 2016, when he released emails, it was kind of like is he a political figure? So it's been really interesting to hear that public perception of how people respond to him as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also it's a complicated, he's such a controversial and complicated figure because, well, you could argue that by releasing all of those documents is exposing the illegal things that the US military was doing. But at the same time, these documents were just published. There wasn't, I think, kind of investigation. Some people say that Julian Assange is a journalist, but he was not a journalist because he didn't do investigation and kind of editing of those documents. And as a result, some informants, like civilians, also were targeted and killed because their names were mentioned in those documents. So it's a complex and complicated story.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really fits into that bold category of what a controversial and complex person, and there's never it's never black and white.
Yeah. And well, before we move on, I also want to spotlight his lawyer, Jen Robinson. Jen is such a rock star. Let me just rattle through all of her achievements. She's a remarkable human rights lawyer. She started working with Assange in 2010 when she was quite new and young. And more recently, she has represented families of murdered Palestinian journalists, Persian journalists targeted by Iran, and Jimmy Lai, the 70-year-old Apple Daily founder who's imprisoned in Hong Kong by the CCP. And you might have also known her from representing Amber Heard in the British court. So she's
her black and white, can get behind, love her. I stan her.
Incredible bold woman. She's won many international pro bono awards as well for her work as a human rights lawyer. So big fan of Jen over here.
Absolutely. Belle, I didn't know about Jen, so thank you for bringing that bold story to the table.
You're welcome.
This month, we've spent quite a lot of time talking about scientists and sometimes the kind of crappy things that science can do. So I wanted to bring a science story that kind of shows you the story of the little guy out in nature, but being bold in a way that no one expects. So what does that mean? Scientists have actually...
Very intrigued.
Yeah. Scientists have actually discovered a very tiny fern. Super tiny. It's about 15 centimeters, but it has the world's largest genome ever recorded.
What?
This fern, whose name is Tesmepettus oblantosa, which is clearly not the way to say it.
Spanish.
Yeah, it's not Spanish. I've completely butchered the saying. We'll have it written in the blurb. Is only, like I said, 15 centimeters long, but has a genome over 50 times the size of the human genome.
What? How is that possible? I am super intrigued right now. I don't know if people know that. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm a geneticist by training. I did my PhD in genetics.
That's why I thought you'd love this story.
Never heard this.
Oh, they only found this in the last month. So that's probably why you haven't heard about it yet. So its genome is actually the length of 160 billion nuclear bases. And so that's crazy. Yeah. And actually the point is the researchers aren't even sure why a small fern has such a large genome, but they have hypotheses around, maybe there were genetic bottlenecks and therefore the species had to evolve in such a way. But there really there isn't any reasoning behind why such a small, unconspicuous fern would have such a large genome. So this discovery to me highlights the importance of studying biodiversity in all its forms, even the small and inconspicuous plants that you'd never expect. And it reminds me of a saying. You always say never judge a book by its cover, but I'd like to change that to never judge a genome by the size of its phenotype.
Bam! I love that. I'm just dropping this.
I think this time we can actually say we're complete nerds, right?
I love that. Oh, I love this story. Actually, so riveted. Oh, all right. My second bold or silly story is about another explosive story in the news cycle this week. So, Western Australian Senator Fatima Payman made a splash in Australian politics. A Muslim woman born in Kabul, Afghanistan, she's really a breath of fresh air in the very white, very old, very male Australian Parliament. She was elected in 2022 as a Labour member, and Fatima has been a vocal advocate for Palestinians throughout Israel's invasion of Gaza. And it's not hard to understand why, because of the lived experience of her and the community.
And just the basic humanity.
That's so true.
Anyone that could see what's happening, that hears the story, to not be able to vote with your conscience. I could not imagine someone like, I love how you've chosen two bold people, and 100%, what a bold move to stand up against the tide and around you.
Yeah, thanks for raising that as well. And the reason why it is particularly bold is because of the Labour Party rules that stipulated that all members must vote the same position that the caucus agreed on. And this week, she crossed the floor to vote in favor of a resolution supporting Australian recognition of Palestinian statehood. And this has caused just a lot of conflict within the Labour Party and within Australian politics. By voting differently, there was grounds for expulsion from the party. And sure enough, Fatima was suspended from the caucus and she resigned from the Labour Party 2 days ago to become an independent senator. Shaz, what are your thoughts? I was surprised that the Labour Party took disciplinary actions against her. When I read the news that she had crossed the floor, I thought that surely in this instance, it should be allowed because of all the reasons that we discussed earlier.
Yeah, 100%. I was a bit like, oh yeah, of course, not a story. Saw it, went, yeah, of course, cool, next.
Yeah.
And then you saw this story kind of swell and get bigger, and the domino effect, especially because the government wanted to focus on tax cuts. And this story just overshadowed that. And to me, it was like, this is a young woman who represents the best of Australia. She is, clearly has the right policies, has the right heart, and did something that any member of parliament representing their community would do. And it has been fascinating to see the backlash for her. And also now talking about, can she actually be eligible for Australian Parliament, and talking about how they're going to use Section 44 because she couldn't, as you mentioned, she was born in Afghanistan right now, which is under Taliban control. They're like, oh, she couldn't give up her citizenship. And it's like, I wonder why.
Yeah, it's just really like threatening this young woman who, it's just such contradiction to what the Labour Party should stand for and what they think they stand for. I thought it was so out of touch, exactly as you say. They had a good story going on with the tax cuts, and this just really ruined their positive press. And I thought it was so bizarre and short-sighted for them to do that, to go after a young woman who's voting with her conscience and opening themselves up to all of this criticism. And I don't know if you saw also Penny Wong's comments. I am generally a fan of Penny Wong and her work, but she said that Fatima should have voted with the party because she voted with the party all those years ago when they voted against same-sex marriage. And Penny Wong is a queer woman. So I just thought it was quite bizarre, and it represents quite an old-fashioned political view.
I hadn't heard of that. And so that to me, reinforces that disappointment that I believe that you got to stand with community. But the whole reason for a conscience vote is when your conscience is touched. It is a rare occasion and it is for extraneous, incredible circumstances. And I think this counts as one. So to see someone so bravely make a decision at such a young age, this is someone that I would rally around as opposed to be pushed out and unsupported.
Just overall very disappointing, and we'll really have to see how the Australian voters respond to this incident.
And I'm hoping, politics aside, that the people rally around her, that she has a good support network. Brings me to my next story. I feel like all our stories have been a bit,
serious. It's been a serious week.
It's been a serious month, guys. And look, there's so many elections around the world with massive consequences. We've just had an election in India with Modi. We've had France and Le Pen. And in the UK, look, and there's the one that's happening in the US, and I am prematurely graying. All right, I have gray hair all in the front of my hair.
Stressed already. It's such a massive election year.
It is massive. My heart is racing. I'm constantly on my phone, and this is not helpful. But Belle, I think we should do a whole podcast on elections around the world because it is quite different and the consequences are quite significant. But look, this is the bold or silly segment. And I thought, you know what? We need some silly in our life.
Please bring some silliness.
Absolutely. So what's silly when it comes to elections? And I love that this is a UK tradition. You might have already seen this. So UK has this tradition where they often have joke candidates alongside the actual candidate. So it might be
what do you mean?
So you have the actual candidate, you have, some of their competitors, but then you have these joke competitors who are people dressed in Elmo suits, people with a balaclava of baked beans.
I'm into this. I think they might do a better job than some of the actual candidates.
Absolutely. And my favorite, Count Binface. So Count Binface is a self-proclaimed intergalactic space warrior who had a bin on his face and was standing right next to Rishi Sunak.
We need a photo.
Standing right next to Rishi Sunak, who is the ex-Prime Minister of UK, who was contesting his seat of Richmond and North Outeron parliamentary seat in the UK election. So all this media coverage, it's at that point, the current Prime Minister plus Count Binface. And it was incredible.
Oh,
and
gosh.
So it's just a way in which it kind of talks about the severity of what is policy and how it impacts the people, but also how kind of silly elections are and how it is a bit of a popularity contest of, when you're on stage, I think it's quite a humbling experience to be like, this is the man who at one point, like maybe 2 days ago, was a very powerful man in UK.
Yeah.
Next to just an ordinary person. Yeah, exactly. An ordinary person. And it kind of puts into light what is elections, what,
the critiques of, I think, the democratic process.
Yeah, critiques or the joy of, participatory elections. So I thought that was fun. I will also say this was his best finish to date, finishing 6th overall. So congratulations, Binface, Count Binface. Sorry, I've got to,
Count Binface for Prime Minister.
and congratulations to Labour in UK as well. So,
after 14 long years. So good luck, Keir Starmer. We'll be watching.
We will be watching.
And of course, let's wrap things up by calling BS on things that have a culture in a stranglehold.
All right, are we ready?
My favorite segment.
Mine too. I know this is our baby and we're not allowed to have favorites, but this
well all our kids know who our favorite is. It's calling BS. All right, so Shaz, I have brought the first one for us to start.
Okay,
with.
I'm ready.
So you know how you and I are both Melburnians, different parts of Melbourne, but Melburnians. And one thing about Melburnians is that we are obsessed with coffee.
Absolutely, coffee. Yes.
Coffee. So there there's recently this rise of specialty coffee. Have you seen them?
I've seen you drink one, so I'm not
I am
sure.
obsessed with this particular one, which I will make you try next time.
Look, I've seen it. Have I tried it? No. But that's because I'm a coffee snob. So like explain it to me, Belle.
Look, I too am a coffee snob, but I credit Aiden and Quinn for turning me onto peanut butter foam. That was amazing. And look, I'll just read out a few other specialty coffee. Peanut butter foam is like quite normal or like normal compared to the others. There's some
Is it normal?
beetroot coffee. Wait for it. Beetroot coffee. There are some with, oh, this sounds delicious, with mascarpone on it. Oh, sorry, I have it on the wrong side. I'm a green. There's coconut cold brew that unsure. There's tiramisu, and this final one. I mean, I don't want to be a hater before I try it, but very, very skeptical. Iced long black with orange juice.
Ding, 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 ding.
You're being cancelled.
What do you think? Are you... No. Okay.
You're a no for specialty coffee?
Not for the last one.
But not for the last
Last
one. Yeah, I think we have to concur. Although we might do a live try it. Try it before you hate on it.
No,
We'll
I'm
do
a
a live
hater.
one.
I'm a Kendrick Lamar. I am petty and I am all about coffee. So I am a...
All right. We disagree.
We...
Agree to disagree.
All right, Belle. I know many people are probably listening to this podcast going, did they just miss the bigger story? Like, did they completely just pretend like it didn't happen?
Yeah, we intentionally did.
Mainly because we want to forget that it happened.
Although some people don't have to try hard to forget things.
So, the debate 2024, the US debate with Trump and Biden, the sequel that no one wanted, but everyone got. What do we think?
It was such a dumpster fire. I don't know where to start. I cannot believe that the US, it has a population of 300 million people, and these are the two people that they can find to compete in the upcoming election.
And look, I don't want to conflate the two. Joe Biden is an incredible president who has done policy-wise quite a lot of progressive things that would be unexpected and was the reason why Donald Trump was beaten. However, the first minute of that election gave me a heart attack and I was very confused and very scared. So knowing when to quit, like we see all these resilience conversations, I'm in all these talks and I'm like, all right, you got to keep going. But no, I think we need, when do we stop?
I know I feel like this conversation has been bubbling up over the last few years. Typically, it is Trump's party that is questioning Biden's age, etc. And my position before this debate was that, hey, that's ageism. This man has done amazing things.
Yeah.
At least like miles and miles and miles and miles ahead from the president that Trump was.
Yeah.
But in this debate, it was not looking great.
And if it was just against any other Republican nominee, I would be like, sure, have at it. But this is such a consequential...
The stakes are high.
The stakes are too high. And it got me thinking, when I'm 80, Belle, and we're friends, please stop
We'll
me.
still be doing calling BS.
We will absolutely be calling BS, but stop me. Like, just be like, babe, let's have some coffee.
It's time to... it's time to have a little lie down.
Rest. So what do we say? Are we calling BS or are we standing by it? Pretty unanimous.
Yeah, I am nervously watching. All right. Moving on to the third one. Oh, this is one that brought me joy. Can we talk about Travis Kelce performing on the stage at Taylor's concert? It was so adorable. Okay, I was skeptical about Travis initially. I didn't know much about NFL. I didn't know much about the guy, but this performance, yeah, it was just really cute to see a man who is up there supporting, putting the spotlight on the woman who is incredible at what she does and just being there, being so proud of her and celebrating her.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love it too. The reason why my face was aghast was not what you were saying, but some of the people in our audience does not agree.
They don't care.
They
How
don't-
can you not care?
I
It's a momentous
yes, I
moment in
love
history.
a man or a partner who simps for their partner. I am all
Yes.
about simping. I love it, and I am on
Yeah.
board.
And one of the reasons why I particularly liked it is because of a lot of the toxicity that we see from sports people,
Yeah.
from men in particular, exhibiting very negative behaviors, such as the one example that we talked about last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care about his name, what's his face, whatever. So yeah, I thought it was a really good example to set
Yeah.
for healthy masculinity.
Ding, ding, ding. Look, we agree. I knew we would get to this situation. I knew we would agree.
All right,
Um,
hit me next.
Hit you. All right. So, Belle, you mentioned at the start of the podcast that I was very fortunate enough to
Jet
go to,
setting.
I was jet setting to Europe, but that means a long, long, long flight from Australia. All my flights from here to there to there to back, I hadn't checked in on time, so I got the middle seat.
No, you poor thing.
I was
You
on the
poor
middle
thing.
seat. And what I want to have is like, I think we've all flown enough that we understand airplane safety. So I am proposing that we get rid of airplane safety. Okay?
What?
We get rid of airplane safety. I know how to put my seatbelt on. What I would like is instead a lesson on airplane etiquette. Okay? So, window people, you get the window. Middle people, you get both hand rests, all right? Because you're stuck in the middle, you get to put your hands on. Aisle people, you get the aisle.
You can stretch your long legs.
Exactly. So I would like scrap the how to put your seatbelt when this falls. When
Okay, that's a bad idea.
no, Boeing taking the planes down, I do not care. But while the plane is going down, I want proper etiquette. So I would like etiquette videos. Are you
Okay.
standing by me? Have I convinced you?
I can be convinced about etiquette. Yes. Now
Yes.
I can agree that the people in the middle deserves just some extra thing. Not only you should get the handles,
Yeah.
you should get some extra chocolate just to compensate the trauma of sitting in the middle seat.
I agree. And like, when can you, like, also things like, when should you ring the bell? Like, how often can you ask for a glass of water before it gets annoying or rude? Like, I think just basic etiquette lessons of like, look, once every hour asking for water is fine. Something
Set
like
some ground rules there.
ground rules on like how to behave on
And
an
how much
airplane.
alcohol one is supposed to drink and not drink.
Yes.
Because I
Yeah.
have had enough with drunk people on the plane. Usually not me.
Yes.
Although to say that safety thing is still important, especially given the turbulence that has been going on. Have you seen that video of someone? Okay, I'm not supposed to laugh because all of these people have been traumatized.
To know how that happened.
So it was turbulent so badly that this person was knocked up into the overhead baggage area and was stuck up there. And there was videos of this poor man being pulled down from
I'm
I'm crying. Poor man.
Yeah, so that is a horrible situation, and I feel very bad. But
Use your seatbelt. Put your seatbelt on.
look, I'm a lover of conspiracy theories. I am convinced Boeing is like killing off all those whistleblowers. So like,
Okay, we're not getting sued there.
yeah, we're not
Allegedly.
allegedly. Yeah. So
All
I
right,
agree.
moving on.
Smart
The
woman.
next one.
That's why she brings the brains and the beauty.
Just trying to cover our asses so that we don't get sued. Okay. The next one that I have, going back to how bloody cold it has been, puffer jackets. How do we feel? I have changed my mind on this actually. Before this year, I was a bit like, puffer jacket. I don't know if you're stylish enough. But now, given how cold it is, I think I'm on board. it's a Melbourne uniform, the North Face, or what is the other?
The RMH William boots.
Yes, you see them literally everywhere on university campuses and finance bros.
Do you know what it reminds me of? You know, the 6 foot. I want a 6 foot.
Oh, no,
Blue
wait,
eye.
looking for a man in finance. That slaps.
Yeah.
That's such a bomb. I love that
Yeah.
girl.
I agree. Puffers. What do we think? We all agree.
You wore a puffer.
I did, but
today when you walked in. Like,
but it was neon blue.
why you lie? Okay, yeah, fair. You are interesting. You're not boring like the rest of us.
Except I will say it looks like a puffer jacket. It feels like a puffer jacket. It may not be a puffer jacket. It's actually very cold. So
Just
yeah,
the look.
I think I might have to
Yeah.
invest as well. You're right.
All right. They are very overpriced. Okay, I don't know if they're overpriced or not because I don't know how much it costs to produce it, but they're very expensive.
Yeah, they are very, very expensive. Yeah. All right. I'll it's because I don't have one. That's why I'm against it.
That's why you're a hater.
Yeah, that's why I'm a hater. But I think I am so cold and I walk around with literally a blanket around me. So I better invest.
Maybe invest in one.
All right. I have one that I actually think I really need your opinion and perhaps some recommendations.
Always here for some wise advice, not just for opinions.
So I was recently asked, it was one of those things, and they said, "Hey, so what are you listening to?" And I go, oh no. And I actually had to say what songs, like what my top 3 songs were at the moment. It was like a
That's so personal. What an intrusion of people's privacy. Asking about what music you sing, what music you listen to.
I know. I haven't updated my Spotify or my YouTube playlist from 2010.
Who uses YouTube playlist? But Spotify playlist from 2010, I actually want that playlist. I bet you have lots of R&Bs,
That's
like
it. Like
Eminem,
Slim Shady.
Slim
to you,
Shady.
All right.
Dr. Dre,
Absolutely.
Snoop Dogg.
The only like recently I added Kendrick Lamar, but no, it just got me thinking. Like I do not know what is hot. I do not know.
It's very exposing.
Yeah.
Like music is such a personal experience that sharing music, I feel like it's a privilege of people with taste. And that is not me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say you were like talking about privilege. I'm like, no, I just have no taste, and I've not updated my music interest, and I am embarrassed about what I listen to.
Totally. I share that. And I'm a bit of a psycho. I don't listen to music.
Okay, that is
Does
red
that
flag
change?
number 1.
Does that change what you think of me? Oh no, I'm getting
Everyone,
right and center.
everyone is saying that's a red
Certified,
flag.
certified psycho. Well, I am quite obsessive with my music, like listening. The last album that I was obsessed with was Hamilton Musical, and I listened to that from the start to end on loop for a year. So is this okay? I'm getting lots of red.
Is this a
Am
cry
I
for help?
cons- Do I need to be checked into therapy
you?
session? Okay, maybe. You know what? Introduce to me your favorite music. I need some proper education.
Yeah, I thought I was bad.
And
I
fix
think
what?
send her your music, your Spotify playlist.
Fix this. I can't go out and sharing my musical playlist and it's just all Hamilton. So please make me cool.
I love that. I love that. So
Okay.
red flag on Belle.
Okay, the next thing, I feel it personally. I take it very personally. Renting in Melbourne. Are we all renting?
Yes.
Renting is so stressful. So recently I've had to move out of, well, I haven't moved yet, but I received a notice to vacate, which was stressful, but also I've lived in this place for 4 years now and actually ready for a change. But then the whole process of browsing realestate.com, going out to inspections, and submitting your applications like a lowly person, like, please give me a roof over the head. And having to submit all of those evidence and say, I'm a real person. And I promise I will pay rent. I'm not squatting. That just made me feel, the whole process is so stressful and feeling quite just the insecurity as well and having to move and pack up all my possessions, and I'm a hoarder as well. Okay, sounds like it's my problem.
No, no.
I'm explaining it this way.
I think renting is really stressful, and especially like when you meet people like your friends who have houses and they've got a
Yes.
mortgage, and you're like,
Where did you get the money
Yeah.
from?
and I'm like, I don't have that in my 5-year plan. It's not in my 10-year plan. It's probably not in my 20-year plan. I'm going to be renting forever. So making that process more efficient would be really helpful.
I know. And I also feel like the longer that I rent, the further I am to the dream of owning a house as well, because
Mhm.
all of this money that could have gone into savings, that eventually can go onto a deposit, have all gone to my landlord's pockets. So, not a big fan of renting, but still grateful that I could keep a roof over my head, especially with this cost of living crisis that we know that a lot of people are struggling. So I will throw a housewarming.
Is everyone invited?
It's a tiny house, but maybe we'll do an event there for our
Ooh.
listeners.
All right. Keep that in mind. So my next one, and this is my second last one. Again, I think it's showing my age. What happens when you're late to the cultural conversation? Are you still allowed to participate? So, for example, I finally watched Wicked. I have
You're like 50 years late.
okay.
Okay, but what did you think? Did you like it? The musical?
It was kind of crap.
You did not say that. Okay, you're cancelled.
Am I cancelled? Is this-
Yes, you are cancelled.
Okay, hold on. This
But-
story is okay. So I go in with high expectations, right? It's meant to be iconic.
It is iconic.
Okay, someone's
continue
green.
talking.
No one explains why they're green. And so you go there and you expect the Wicked Witch to be wicked as described, because that is the description. And then it
But
turns
there's
out
a backstory. This
Yeah.
is a backstory about the witch.
who isn't wicked. And actually, the nice person is wicked. Kind of. It is
Mind-bending.
confusing. It's not mind-bending. No. What it is a complete mischaracterization of the title. It is not as advertised. So I'd like to say, I do not stand by it.
But
Like,
it's a plot twist. It's a plot twist. It's
no,
I
but the plot
enjoy.
twist happened in the first 10 seconds, Mel. I think reveal it
How
at the
can you
start.
how can you not love when the wicked? Okay, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but the wicked get lifted. Like to be able to sing to in a theater to a whole group of people and being lifted in the air like many meters above ground. I was nervous, and the music was so good.
Okay. Let me like two different things. Performance, incredible. The best thing that I've
Okay,
ever seen.
We agree.
The outfits, iconic. I love it. Campy. Love it. Everything I love. The plot line,
Who goes to musical for plot lines? So
Basic.
that's where I think except for Hamilton,
Oh.
who goes to musicals for plot lines. All right. Anyway, but will we go and see the Wicked movie with Ariana Grande that's coming out later
with
in the year?
Jonathan.
Jonathan Bailey was it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we will go see it.
For those arms.
And those eyes. And those jawlines. And those hair.
Just a beautiful man.
All right. From one beautiful man to more beautiful people. Don't know if you saw this, but I want to briefly talk about how the Kardashians are apparently crying about the pressure that they feel under the beauty standard. So I don't know, this is a bit of a nuanced, we could have a nuanced conversation, but instead we'll have a shallow one today. So firstly, Kim Kardashian said that she only has 10 years left of looking good. So that's what she says. So she anticipates that she's, I think, 40-ish now. So in like 10 years, her plan is to disappear because she would no longer look good.
Mhm.
And then Kylie recently on an episode cried apparently and said her appearance has been talked about by the public, by people all the time. That made her feel really crap. It's a miracle that she still feels as confident as she is now. How do we feel? I don't know, as I say, it's a complex one, but
See a lot of calling BS.
Mhm.
I love big butts and I cannot lie. I'm so sorry.
That reminds me of the Nicki Minaj song that I won't sing because it's a bit rude.
It's just the Kardashians will always have a place in my heart. I just
Interesting.
love how iconic they are. I love the drama.
Yes, they are iconic.
I hate what they did to Taylor, but also the messiness, the pettiness. I am a petty queen. So
But
I love it.
on
the beauty standards itself,
on the beauty standard,
I think, yes, they've perpetuated a different beauty standard, but at least it's okay. All right. I am getting peer pressured here. I agree. I think they've taken a
Let me
lot from
try.
Black culture.
yes. That is one big critique as well.
Yeah. So I think they've taken a
Yes.
lot from Black culture. And I think that's, for me, their biggest critique. But they have normalized different body types.
Yes.
To me, that's a positive. But again, it's an unobtainable body type.
Yes.
So it kind of goes this way.
But I know it is a complicated,
Yeah.
it is a complicated conversation. I think that I don't deny that they would be under scrutiny and feel that pressure to look perfect all the time. And they would have gone under surgery, under the knife for lots of procedures, which I cannot imagine. Honestly, it's so stressful and the pain. I can't. I
Oh
wouldn't
no,
be able to
I'm
do it
ready.
in
Just
myself.
tell me where to put the Botox.
You're perfect. There's
No,
nothing that you
I'll
need
be
to do
wet.
with that face. But I just feel like it's such irony for them to then cry wolf because they have, at the end of the day, amassed so much fortune. They have made a lot of money of setting that beauty standard. So sorry, I don't have time for that.
I'm still conflicted. I think, yeah, they've set the beauty standard and they've built an empire, but they didn't say you have to do it. I think a lot of people aspired.
No,
All
that
right.
is gaslighting.
Some threats
Okay.
thrown over the fence. All right, peer pressure wins.
You
And-
can have independent thought in this podcast.
I think
But I
I'd be-
convinced you.
Yeah, you called me out on my BS, and I think it's only fair that I.
No, I'm calling out the Kardashians BS, but I am also a fan of theirs. So it's a weird parasocial relationship.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
To the last and final one. This is something I'm super excited about. I want to know how we are feeling about the Olympics. It's going to start very soon. Are we excited? Are we?
Yay, we're all excited.
We're excited. And look, I am the least coordinated person you'll ever meet. I do not care about sports any other time. But every 4 years, I sit in front of that TV and I do not move. I watch every single sport. I watch the curl. Well, no, there's no curling in this one. You can tell that I do not know much about sport, but I will watch everything. The shooting, the archery, the decathlon, the pentathlon. I don't even know half
The
these sports.
swimming, the running, they are my favorite.
Okay.
And okay, we're already getting to favorites. So
Yeah.
I have to say I wasn't a big Olympic fan until I think the one that really registered for me was 2008 when Beijing had the Olympic and that magnificent opening ceremony. That was incredible. And then it was the last Olympic during COVID because we had nothing, absolutely nothing to do at home except for watching the Olympic, and it became a bit of a shared experiences. Like everyone was watching the Olympics, so I am looking forward to it this year.
I've always loved it. I become an armchair expert about sports
You're
that
a
I've
true
never
fan.
heard about, and I'm like, oh, this epee, it didn't touch, and I'm googling and I'm ranting about this was an unfair call. I am doing all of that,
I
and I've
know
always
people are
loved
like,
it.
you could do better, you could do faster,
And
and
I
we're
know-
just sitting there on the couch and eating.
Absolutely, and I'm like, this strategy is wrong. They need to fire the coach. This weightlifting technique.
I know, and we're the most unfit people.
So I'm really looking forward to it. I love it. I get
Okay.
very patriotic. I start support. What I really love and what I'm looking forward to is the country outfits in the opening ceremony. I love the flag bearers. I love those outfits. I love it. So I am very much looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Well, and with that, we've come to the end of today's episode of Calling BS. through our eyes, Shaz.
A big thank you to all our listeners and our audience. Thank you for tagging along on this wild ride.
Well, right, indeed.
We really hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. So don't forget to hit subscribe, drop us a review, and spread the word.
And join in on the voting on Spotify. Every episode, we have a secret question for the listeners. So join us, it's fun. Until next time, remember,
Don't just accept the BS.
call it out.
Yay!